listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me today, the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm here.
Yes.
We're sitting
same here.
You're right. It's been a long week. It's actually been a long couple of weeks. We talked about it at the beginning of the stretch, but the Flyers have played 12 games over the last 3 weeks, and I think we're all a little tired, and we're cruising into the All-Star break here. We're recording on the Sunday morning.
Could you use a break? Yeah.
Like,
I've been the same way. I've been looking forward to this week away. Kind of. It was, when I was kind of doing my rundown of what I'm going to write this week, or and when there's 4 games in a week, like there has been, then you automatically have to go in and go preview, recap, like a whole deal of stuff. And it was nice to kind of look at this week and go, you know what? I pretty much have 2 things I'm going to probably do outside of the podcast episode. And that's pretty much it unless something happens. And there shouldn't be, because they're on a bye week the whole week. So
right.
There shouldn't be any crazy news or anything like that. So I'm looking at you can never really analyze a team until you get to this kind of point where it's like, hey, listen, we got a few days to do some stuff, not one overnighter to kind of throw in something. Like you can do that with an occasional, like you can do it with like a story about a specific aspect of the team, but you really can't look at the team as a whole and try to break a whole bunch big picture kind of deal without having some good time. That's why we usually wait until the off season for those, or like Christmas time or something like that. Like when you know you get a break. This is a legitimate break. And then like the only other thing I know that I'm planning to write about is the All-Star game's going to fit into this. So I'll probably have something on Kevin Hayes just because he's the All-Star. So, and he talked a lot about being an All-Star and things like that. And
we all know
there's a really right.
Sure.
And there's a lot of good little stories he's featured, from some stuff about his brother to what the weekend's going to be. So I'll throw all that together probably on the day of the All-Star game, or have it up on the day of the All-Star game. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. And so before we jump into this week's games, make sure to follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go find us on sportstalkphilly.com. So, a couple of games against Winnipeg this week that kind of bookended the weekend. Do you want to start with Saturday night and go backwards, or do you want to start Saturday or last Sunday night and kind of move forward?
Either way doesn't really matter. I mean, it was kind of one of those. I remember talking about it last week on the show, that this was going to be a way to kind of test where they are, because we looked at the entire week or the entire month leading up to, and it was like, okay, look, they're beating Anaheim, they're beating Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo's been a better team, but they started to beat some decent teams, but they beat Anaheim twice, they beat Arizona. It's like, all right,
right. But then they beat Washington, they beat Buffalo,
right? When they beat Buffalo,
teams.
Well, and they beat Buffalo convincingly. They beat Washington 2 times in a row, 2 games in a row, and okay, so they lose to Toronto and they lose to Boston, but they kind of kept following this
Who's
track.
not losing to Toronto and Boston?
It feels like. And even at the end of last week, though, we looked at the way that it was okay. They lose the game to Chicago, which maybe was a little unexpected. They should be a better team than Chicago, and then they beat Detroit again on the road, and it's like, okay, you're going into Sunday. You've lost 3 games in the month. That's not bad. Obviously, you're doing something right. And if you not bookended it, but if you kind of tacked on those 2 other games at the end of 2022 that were wins also, you're like, to go nearly a month and have only 3 losses is really moving in the right direction. And that's why
especially a dense month.
Right. And that's kind of why we had to start talking about playoffs a little bit, because it's like, listen, they're in the race.
They were 5 points out.
They were getting right. They're working their way back into this thing. And if this, and the key was, if this continues, we're going to have no choice but to continue talking about it. And they kind of met their match this week.
As of today, they're 6 points out, even with a bit of a poor week. And I know that the Penguins have 2 games in hand. I do understand that.
Sure, but do you want to know
but
do you want to know the way I actually kind of looked at it? And this isn't the way to perfectly look at it, because there's 2 teams, because Buffalo also has games in hand, and I get that. But look at where Washington is, who has the same number of games played that you do, and they're 7 points ahead.
That's a vulnerable team.
it's not that it's vulnerable. Like, the thing that I can't get over when I look at that, if you're going to talk the playoff conversation, which again, totally different story here. Like, most people by now who listen to the show should know where I stand on it,
Same.
where I've kind of called the shots on where it should go, because they're stuck in the middle, and that's why like last week's episode was titled "Stuck in the Middle."
Yep.
That's why, like, they're definitely stuck in the middle, and it was even the way I described the game going against Minnesota, because Minnesota's like, for a playoff team, they could just as easily be out, because Minnesota's 1 point up on Colorado, and then from being third place in the Central to being in a wild card spot to being tied for the last playoff spot. So you're stuck in the middle too. Like, it's that close that you could be in today, out tomorrow kind of stuff. The Flyers are even worse middle because it's not even in. You're a ways away from being in, but you're a ways away from being at the bottom, so you're really stuck in the middle. And the difference, though, especially over the course of this week, or even just the course of this week / last week, because they had taken care of business against every team below them in the standings, every single team, until that Chicago game. If they win the Chicago game and then take any 2 overtime losses that they have, and I'm willing to throw out a handful here, because, like, I'm not talking about just this week. Like, maybe they get one this week where they win in overtime, but what about the game against Montreal way back that goes to a shootout where they're 1 second away from winning the game anyway, and there's another point? What about the game? What about an overtime game against Arizona, who you would think they could beat, and they did, and they did already once this season later on. So, what if that turns into an extra point? So, what if you could kind of amass at least 1 point in that Chicago game, plus 2 or 3 more from these overtime losses? They've got 8 of them in overtime, 9 if you include the one shootout loss.
Sure.
What if you could suddenly pull 4 or 5 points, and next thing you know, you're talking about being 3 points back of Washington.
What if the Rangers,
with the same number of games?
What if the Rangers won that shootout in 2010?
Well, exactly.
It's one of those things.
No. And I'm not trying to do revisionist history here and like make it one of these things where it's like, hey, listen, if they did this. No. But the point is that if you were like, seriously, they've got eight games lost over them. They're 1-8 in games in 3-on-3 overtime,
right,
not including the shootout. So they've got a 9th loss there because they've only been to 1 shootout all year, which is kind of, to be honest, at 51 games in, is kind of shocking.
Yeah. And that just reinforces what we've been talking about. They're not a good team. Good teams find a way to win those games. Good teams find a way to get those points. Good teams find a way to not blow a lead to the Montreal Canadiens with less than 2 seconds on the clock.
They were in a bad place at that time, obviously, and I get that, but
they're just a bad team, is what I'm saying. Yes, they're playing better. Yes, the vibes are high. Yes, people are playing well.
I don't think they're
okay. I don't think they're a bad team. I don't think they're
an average team. That's what it is. You're stuck in the middle. You are average.
Right. And I still think it's crazy because it's what I've been saying on this show for almost 2 years. I still think that if this team was 100% healthy as constructed, you have Sean Couturier, you have Ryan Ellis, you have Cam Atkinson, this is a pretty decent team. But as of right now, I did also name a top 6 winger, your number 1 center, and theoretically your number 1 defenseman, allegedly. Right. So
I'd love to know how, sure, we all would love to know how much would be different if those guys were able to play with regularity.
Right. If you're playing what ifs, those are the what ifs that I'm.
Well, sure, but that's why, to your point and to mine, kind of in a way, when it comes to this overtime stuff, you could get a ton of extra points based on the games they've lost in 3-on-3, which a handful of years ago they couldn't lose in 3-on-3. It felt like they would win 6 of those in a row because they actually had some players who could score.
Right. Well, they're missing all their skill players, like I just kind of touched on, and not literally all of them. There are some talented players. I'm certainly not.
I don't completely disagree with that in the sense that it's not just that they're missing them; they don't have enough.
Oh no, absolutely not.
You shouldn't, to me, and I'm not trying. This is not to take away from what Sean Couturier offers, but I don't look at him as a guy who I sit there and I go, he's built for 3-on-3 per se.
Right, but good teams have depth and can survive the loss of a star. For example, Austin Matthews is going to be out 3 weeks. Now, he's only going to miss 6 games because of the All-Star break, and I don't know if you've seen the 6 games, but it's actually insane. It's the best possible time to get injured. It's actually insane.
So with the exception of that one game against Boston, you're telling me, probably?
Yeah, after the All-Star break, they play Montreal twice.
Columbus twice, Chicago, and Montreal.
Right. And then Chicago
again.
Yes. It's ridiculous. So he got hurt at the perfect time. But either way, even if they were playing reasonable, mid-caliber playoff teams, the Toronto Maple Leafs would be fine. They'd probably win most of those games. Maybe all of them.
Because they actually have another high-skill player.
They have multiple.
Multiple, I know. But you know
at every position.
You can't
except maybe goalie. But
you can't take away, if Sean Couturier's your guy or Cam Atkinson's your guy, you can't take away that and then not have anything to counter it with.
Sure.
Like, that's the difference. Like, that doesn't mean that you're a team with that lacks depth per se, because I think the Flyers actually have more depth than people want to give it to, because you've got guys who on most teams would fit into the bottom six. You can't have 20 bottom sixers, though.
Right. And that's the thing is, does Nick Delorier play above the fourth line on any playoff team?
No, but that's exactly the point.
How about Zach McEwen?
No.
How about Patrick Brown? Does Patrick Brown make any other playoff team? I like Patrick Brown, but let's be real.
I thought you were going to say that about Zach McEwen, to be honest. Because does he even make it?
I agree.
I agree. I shouldn't say does he even make it, because those guys land on rosters in the playoffs. Yes. They don't play. Usually.
Right.
They're
your black ace. They're your right.
Well, either that or they're number 13 and they're on the roster, but they sit out every game until somebody gets inevitably hurt that you need to throw somebody in. But yes,
certain coaches would rather go 11-7 than put Zach McEwen in the lineup. Like, let's.
I mean, the Flyers beat the Winnipeg Jets at the end of the week because two guys got hurt and didn't make a call on it.
That is fair.
They literally threw in two guys who hadn't played a game in what feels like forever. And still won the game. Right.
But what I mean about the Flyers roster is that they have definitionally depth players. Mm-hmm. What they don't have is any sort of depth of scoring talent, depth of high-end skill.
And I don't look. It's a blanket state, like it's a broad statement here that we were making with this. I don't want to make it seem like a guy like Travis Konechny can't bring you some high end. I'm not trying to say that. But the point is that, okay, go off of their first line right now, or what we presume to be the first line, because John Tortorella doesn't do numbers with the lines. No. I get it. But Joel Farabee, Noah Cates, and Travis Konechny, let's just say. Okay, yep. Konechny's playing like an all-star, or was for a little while. He's kind of cooled off a little bit. But that could also be, as we've been talking about for the entire time so far, is that a little bit of the fatigue of 12 games in 3 weeks kind of deal where you're playing literally every other night for a while? Yes, that can probably get in the way.
Yeah.
Noah Cates has picked it up offensively kind of in that time, which is a good sign. But he's really, and I love that Tortorella kind of said this, because not in style, I don't want to compare styles, but he is giving me Sean Couturier vibes right now, in the sense that the defense is the big focus for a young player who seems to, like, all they talk about is how smart he is defensive positioning wise. That's all they talk about. And if the scoring can come, especially since he never really played center, he was more of a winger going through all like college and all that.
Which is so crazy, because you almost never see players jump from the wing into the center, especially and
play as well as they do as like he is positionally. Yes, I hear you there.
We're hoping for a little of that Tage Thompson, huh?
Maybe.
That's what he did. They moved him from the wing into the middle, and that's what unlocked his superpowers.
Thompson was still a first-round pick, though. Noah Cates was not. Noah Cates went.
Yeah, but Tage Thompson was also like 24, and a lot of people had given up on him.
Fair enough. Well, Noah Cates is 23 right now, isn't he?
Yeah, but like you said, he's a bit of a later round project, so it's not a big deal.
Which every team needs to have. At least to me, I think every team needs to have one of those guys that you go, this doesn't happen all the time.
We talk about development. We talk about how the Tampa Bay Lightning can continue to churn out players from the Syracuse Crunch to win championships.
Exactly.
That's what they're doing. That's what the Flyers are doing here, hopefully.
Yeah, and then Joel Farabee, who, like, we have to again continue to acknowledge, it's gonna be a while before, like, it's gonna be next season before you see, and
before he's 100%.
And again, Tortorella kind of made a comment that kind of pulled back on, because Tortorella kind of earlier in the year said he can't hide behind the injury anymore. You got to kind of get going or whatever. And he kind of pulled back on, well, with a couple people he's pulled back on, but he even said, you don't add muscle during the season. Nobody can do that. You don't have the ability to work out.
Right, you just can't lift like that
at the same level, because you need, like, there's only so much you can do physically before you need to stop. because like from just playing the games. You can't just look at every off day and say, I'm getting into the gym and I'm building muscle in between game day. Right. You can't do it. It's not possible. You need to
relax.
It's why
rest.
it's why teams like I don't think the Flyers have had a practice in nearly 2 weeks.
Probably not.
The week that they just had, Tortorella had even said from the beginning, we're not practicing ever. Like, it's a game every other day, and that's exactly when we're getting on the ice. There's no practices.
Right.
And they didn't. And then this past week, especially when you factor in being on the road, they did the exact same thing. There's no practice in between.
I'm willing to bet the morning skates are light.
Usually optional, to be honest. Tortorella's even said something about like he hates it. He wishes that they would stay off the ice more, but he said I can't tell them not to. So, but so Farabee's production, which was going pretty well for a little while, because he picked it up a little bit about like earlier in the month, I want to say is when that was, and had a handful of games pretty much from the tail end of the West Coast trip to the return home, kind of, where he scored a few more. He had 3 goals and 4 assists, I'm sorry, in like 6 games. And we were kind of getting excited, like, oh, here he comes. This is the guy we remember and also that. And he's literally been held without a point since the Boston game, which, okay, I get the Boston game. The Boston game was obviously a disaster because the talent level is so far, in between. But he hasn't really done much against Anaheim, Chicago, Detroit teams where other guys are finding a way to succeed. He's gone the last now, so this will be an 8-game pointless streak as he goes into the break. So, and you know what? That's kind of been a thing with Joel Farabee his entire career.
He's been a little streaky.
Yeah, so there's not exactly much that you can do about that right now. He's going to have to take a step, and I do think health plays a factor, like to an extent where it's like it's going to be impossible for him to be 100% for the rest of the year. It's just impossible. He needs to be able
down the stretch of that busy schedule. It would make sense that he's a little on the things are a little flared up, maybe. Right. Well, he's maybe not feeling 100%.
Well, he needs to play the rest of the season, then take like 2-3 weeks to a month off. Just to rest and to completely heal back up. I mean, maybe do whatever it is you want to do that's light, but don't go crazy with it. And then
I'm hoping he's taking this entire week off. I don't want him touching ice.
Well, I don't think they can.
Okay. Yeah, but if guys go home and go to the local ice rink, they're gonna let them skate. You know what I mean?
I suppose, but like I don't know.
If a guy wants to get on the ice, he can find a way to get on the ice.
Yeah, I hear you, but truthfully, I don't think it's the case most times. Like, if they give you a week off, they give you a week off.
Take a week off, right? Well, it'd be like checking your email on your vacation. Don't do that. Don't check your email on your vacation.
And the league, the league kind of, I think, with this bye week thing too, also kind of makes it so that it's a little bit of vacation. It's because it's funny. You're bringing this up now, and last week your line was, if they want to, we'll find out where they're all vacationing pretty soon or whatever. And you're not wrong about that. I'm not saying that.
5 days in Cabo or whatever.
Right. Well, and that because the joke was after going to the football game this afternoon, right? After we find out that like half of them went there or something, right?
Well, speaking of, by the way, we do both. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, we both are representing the Philadelphia Eagles today. Just real quick little detour because we don't have a slide for it or anything.
Yeah, no, but it's fair.
I'll ask you the same question I asked you last week, Kevin.
Yes.
If the Eagles do prove victorious today, who would you rather see in their next game?
Oh, I don't have a preference because both of the teams that they would play at that point are good for obvious reasons. It's a tough call. I mean, right now, I guess Kansas City has more question marks, which makes it good. Like, you got a quarterback with an ankle issue. You have, I saw something the other day that Travis Kelce's questionable for the game. Not that he won't play, but it's like, whenever you can put a target on somebody to an extent where you're not where you're trying to deliberately hurt a guy, but when he's not perfect to a high talent player, you kind of want to lean into the advantage a little bit,
I'm going to give you 2 words for a name and then 2 words for a reason.
Okay, this is who you'd rather because I'll tell you because I'll tell you right now, I have who I think who I think it'll be. I know, like in my mind, I know exactly who I think it'll be.
The name is Joe Burrow.
Okay.
The reason is media day. Come on.
Oh, what? Because you like his media day? Is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm not.
I think Joe Burrow is ready for the media test that is playing the Philadelphia Eagles.
You didn't see. You're saying you're doing it from a totally different angle. I figured you're just talking about who would I rather see from a talent level / the team.
Listen, if you've been watching this, listening to this show, consuming this show for a while, you know I've kind of fallen off the football train. I don't care about the game. It'd be cool if they won. I don't really know. I think both the Chiefs and the Bengals are very, very good teams.
Right. So So it doesn't matter. Is the ultimate point.
So let's have some fun. Let's party. Joe Burrow.
No, and here's the thing: if you were asking me to make a pick for the other game, I think Cincinnati wins today.
No, I do. I have weird vibes on Mahomes doing something special.
And
broken ankle. He's going to throw for 350 and rush for another 100.
I don't think it's broken. I think it's a high ankle strain.
Whatever.
I get your point.
After he does something stupid, they're going to say he did it with a broken ankle. So
maybe. I don't know. I still think it's a rematch. It's, it seems like every time that Joe Cool goes into Arrowhead, they find a way to win.
Yep.
Every
time they play the Chiefs.
Against the Chiefs, and that's what I'm taking right now. I'm sorry. He's especially when you consider, and again, we're not a football podcast.
No, so not at all.
I'm not trying to do a breakdown here, and
I fully acknowledge I'm wading in way beyond my depth.
We opened the show last week, and I even said Saturday night couldn't have gone any better when it came to what the Eagles did the week before. Couldn't have gone any better. And I think the only team that came anywhere close to that kind of it couldn't have gone any better was Joe Burrow and the Bengals at that time. That was the one team that went in and look, I'm not sugarcoating this part of it at all. Beat a way better team than the Eagles had to.
Right.
To get there and made it look almost easy. It was pretty close to easy for them against Buffalo. So I got to roll with it right now. I got to say he's been And it's every bit of reason that because he's the quarterback. That's every bit of reason why I would be picking them. Every bit of reason. But we need to get back to the hockey stuff here and stop doing this. Enough of me talking about Joe Burrow, how good of a quarterback he is. This is what the radio station would want from me, not the not the You Would Think podcast here.
Listen, we can have some fun with it. We're allowed to cover whatever we want. Nobody tells.
No, I know, and what a perfect week to kind of have this game fall, because now. It was actually really funny and this is a good tie-in to kind of the end of the Flyers week, if you will. This is a good tie-in for
before we get back on the Flyers. One more thing: if the Eagles do win, we will do a little Super Bowl preview next week. Okay, going to Flyers.
Well, no, the reason I'm saying that is because this is a good lead into the game on Saturday night that they played, because apparently the Sixers had played the afternoon too.
Okay,
and
so
found
turn the floor.
Well, no, because the Flyers.
They were in Winnipeg.
So no, they didn't have to do anything. And besides, it was weird. I didn't even know the Sixers were playing at 3:00 in the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah, I happened to flip it on at work, and I was like, "Oh,
Saturday.
I guess the Sixers game is starting."
But
okay, cool.
But my point, I saw a lot of tweets after the Sixers game was because Joel Embiid had
47. Had
another massive game. And I'm not trying to say it like I don't know anything about this type of stuff. It's like ho hum. He had another 40-something point game. Okay, cool. Another day at the office. But a lot of people were tweeting things like, okay, that's the lead in, go Birds. That's the lead in kind of stuff. And then I kind of thought later on at night, I'm like, the Flyers gave you a kind of a good lead into this could be a fun weekend if this plays out the way that it's leading up to. This feels like what I don't remember exactly what year it was. I want to say it might have been. I mean, it was a long time ago. It was probably 2010 or something like that, or something ridiculous. But there was an Easter weekend where they swept. All three teams played on Easter and they swept.
Nice.
Or not all three. I'm sorry, because it would have been it was Flyers, Sixers, Phillies played on Easter, and it was a clean sweep.
Nice.
And, you're looking at a potential weekend like that and to think, we just brought up Embiid and the way he played for the Sixers. And then you got what you got from Carter Hart on Saturday night. And
Carter Hart put on a show.
He really did. Look, I'm going to be full disclosure here. I did not see a ton of the game on Saturday. I was kind of preoccupied with some other things.
That was a feisty little game, like a lot of their games have been, obviously, throughout the course of the season.
But you see how a game plays out, and like, okay, they scored the first goal. It was kind of late in the first period, and then they score in the second period, and they make it 2-0, and then you kind of check in, and it's like, oh, it's the end of the second period, and it's 2-0, and all it took for me was Owen Tippett scored 3 minutes into the third period, and I'm like, okay, game over.
Yep. Oh, that goal.
They got it now. Yep. That's it.
And the way they were playing like a great team. And Winnipeg is towards the top of the Western Conference last time I checked, right?
And Winnipeg, for them playing Winnipeg to start the week, because it's a good, like we said, it's a bookend kind of thing where they started the week with Winnipeg, they ended the week with Winnipeg. Tortorella even said after that first Winnipeg game, or maybe it's not after the first one. It was, I think he said it after the LA game. Actually, is when he said it. But the Winnipeg game kind of felt the same way, because he talked about after the LA game that in the first 10 minutes he thought they were going to lose 10-0, which it's really funny to say. But
they were getting caved in.
But actually, maybe that was the Winnipeg game, because Winnipeg went up 3-0 8 minutes in.
They were getting caved in. It was ugly.
And it's it was really a shame, because it was the first, Felix Sandstrom was the guy who was kind of back in and all that stuff like that. And we kind of expected, because Carter had gotten the last couple of games despite that. So they had the back-to-back. Carter, we already, because we covered on the last episode that Carter Hart plays against Detroit, has one of those games again, makes a crazy save at the end just to give him the win.
Yep.
And then we had to figure he's not getting the start on Sunday, and he didn't. But that means that when it's kind of going bad, like it was at the start of that game, where it's like 5 minutes in, like a minute and a half later, 2 minutes after that, 8.5 minutes in, you're down 3-0.
Yep.
There's nowhere for him to go. He's not coming out of that game.
No.
You gotta figure it out.
You kind of just gotta deal with it.
And I'm not gonna lie to you. There's an element of this, maybe not the exact order, but there was a bit of an element to this game where the 3-0 kind of comeback that they had starts with the goal around the same time, when you're thinking, like, you kind of go back to that Boston game in 2010. It's like, it's late, you get a goal. Okay, yep. It's a 2-goal game. And they played a decent second period, and then they get another one. Again, same thing, final 2 minutes. Well, now you got a game with the third period coming up, and they get a power play early, and they score on that one too. So you're in the game. And the shame of the whole thing was, and there was plenty of time left after this goal, don't get me wrong, but Winnipeg takes the lead and ultimately gets the game winner on a goal that Sandstrom said he was in between moves. He kind of bit the wrong way, so he couldn't recover. It's a leaky goal. It looks bad. It comes mere hours after Tortorella had said he needs that one more stop. Well, there's the one more stop, and that's the one that was the game winner. So, and kind of unsurprising from there, knowing the way that the schedule was for the rest of the week, it was not really a surprise that Carter Hart was going to get the rest of the week.
Right. It's probably not Felix Sandstrom's best impression heading into the All-Star break.
I don't think he's had the best impression kind of period throughout the year, especially when Sam Ersson came up and did what he did. Like, you can tell that the coach at least didn't want to have to do what they did, but it was the easiest course of action for now. But the coach would prefer to have Ersson back up, and then you could really work with, both guys.
Sandstrom has looked good in flashes, but just not consistently enough to warrant being the backup at this point.
Sandstrom's going to turn out to be probably, and I'm not trying to say this means it's his whole career path.
4th round pick.
Well, he was a 3rd rounder actually, but I hear your point there. No, where I was going,
that's what he's getting traded for.
Oh, okay. But here's where I was going, because I was actually going to make a goalie comparison here, because there was another goalie who played on Saturday night that I kind of think that's exactly what Sandstrom is going to be down the line. Did you catch who was in goal for Florida on Saturday night?
I didn't. Oh, was it Alex Lyon?
Yes. And I think that's kind of your comparison, which means that when this guy's not available, he's your call up and he's around,
Alex Lyon was great in flashes.
Especially against a team like Boston. Absolutely.
Man.
Like, they looked like there was plenty of times where Boston looked like they had that team dead to rights, and he kept them in it, and they They still almost lost the game, but
Yep.
you know, you get a goal with a second to go, and to tie it up. It was very, how very Montreal Canadiens against the Flyers earlier this year kind of stuff. But you get a goal late, and then you find a way to win it in overtime, pretty quickly in overtime too, because we all kind of we had some people over on Saturday, hence why I kind of didn't get a close look at the Flyers game, but kind of like
Fair.
in bits and pieces. The Bruins-Panthers game was on NHL Network, and it was on an hour earlier, so we were watching some of that too, and it went to overtime. We couldn't believe how quickly overtime was over.
So before we get to Saturday, and I know we've talked on Saturday a lot.
Okay.
We are completely skipping over Fight Night in Minnesota.
Oh, that
Holy crow. 3 fights in 15 seconds. A 4th fight in the second period. You know what? They were all good hockey scraps among big, beefy boys. I don't have a problem with any of them.
Until you realize that 2 of the players that were involved got hurt during the game. Now, Wade Allison didn't get hurt in his fight. I will give you that. Zach McEwen broke his jaw in the fight.
Listen, if you're going to fight, that's the kind of thing that happens. I understand.
He also didn't exactly pick an inexperienced fighter there. He fought Marcus Foligno.
I mean, well, and that's why I don't have a problem with it. Nobody was picking on anybody. The most uneven matchup, just kind of size-wise, fighting experience-wise, is going to be Mason Shaw and Wade Allison. But Wade Allison held his own in that scrap.
Sure.
Nick Delorier, Ryan Reeves, what a heavyweight main event to start it off.
And it wasn't and it's interesting because it wasn't even that good of a fight, kind of in a way. Like there were a couple of shots.
It was a pretty solid scrap for this day and age. That was a pretty solid scrap. We don't have a whole lot of technical fighters anymore.
Well, no, and here's the thing. Sometimes I don't judge a fight completely on the quality of. Like, let's say a punch thrown or landed or anything like that. I kind of qualify it as how long do they let it last? If we're still watching the same fight a minute later, a minute and a half later, it's a good one because usually you get Wade Allison goes in there and the takedown happened in 3 seconds, and it's
for
over.
Wade Allison, that's probably ideal.
Oh yeah, well, and he's the one who did, by the way, he wrestled Shaw down instead of the other way around, which is also ideal, but when you get when Reeves and Delorier are out there and it goes for a while, that's way better. I mean, even two experienced guys like McEwen and Foligno who do that, that wasn't that long. I think it was about 15 seconds, maybe.
I'm willing to bet McEwen felt the jaw break and.
Well, no, he went down.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and that was the end of that.
Sure, but I don't know. Anyway,
and then even after that, there were
But there was another one. There was another fight in the second period too.
Yeah, Patrick Brown.
Patrick Brown and Brandon Duhaime. So, which again, kind of nothing to. I think your best one was the first one.
They started at the top. Yeah.
Which everybody was waiting for anyway, because Delorier played there, and Reeves is known for it, and it's like okay.
That was his first fight as a member of the Minnesota Wild.
Right, because I was about to say he's still a relative newcomer to the Minnesota Wild, so I get that, but like the anticipation of having a guy who does that on your roster, and then Delorier who played there for a while, and knowing he does, it's not surprising. And then, but you're right, it was very much a penalty filled game. There was a lot of physicality.
Two big heavy teams. Obviously the Minnesota Wild have a little more skill. Obviously, the Philadelphia Flyers aren't currently icing a player that is as skilled as Kirill Kaprizov or Matt Zuccarello. But
Zuccarello maybe. I feel like because Zuccarello's older now.
That's fair. He slowed down a little bit, but he scored the game winner, and it was pretty.
Because that comes down to defending properly at 3-on-3. I mean. He just walks Travis Konechny, and then D'Angelo's too far on the other side to do anything about it. So
too busy whining about a penalty call he didn't get. Which, to be fair,
no, not in that game. That was L.A.
Oh, that was L.A. I'm sorry. I've gotten the overtime losses mixed up.
Because this was quite literally almost a 1-on-2, and Konechny can't defend to that level. Not when that speed's coming at you. So he just gets like blown past like it was nothing.
Right. They recognize that there was a forward back.
And D'Angelo's kind of playing defense like it's a D pairing, so he's on the opposite side and then he has no angle.
Right.
So you lose that too. So that's where that comes from. No, you're thinking of the end of the LA game where D'Angelo got basically clipped by
it's a penalty.
Yeah.
It's a penalty.
And I get it. They hadn't called anything throughout, so I'm not saying I'm surprised by it.
The refs were terrible in that game.
No, but here's the thing. Like, and I can level with it's a penalty, but I can also level with John Tortorella being like, maybe not the part where he goes, it's not
get up
penalty.
and get back.
Get up and get back. I don't care what happened going against you. You can't turn around in 3-on-3 and look at the official and think that the play's going to stop.
For what it's worth, he did end up picking up an unsportsmanlike and a game misconduct at the end of that one. I
hadn't even realized that. That's how funny it is. I didn't know that at all.
Because that's how much he was giving it to the ref. We need to get John Boy on a lip reading because it was colorful.
Oh, and you got to realize something too. Like we saw the play, obviously, but right. I'm getting up and trying to go downstairs, so I didn't catch any. Like I saw him jawing from the bench.
Clear as day on the lip read. F you, get the F out of here.
Yeah,
you're effing terrible. Just everything under the book. Like it's
an angsty bunch right now because they also got an unsportsmanlike conduct bench minor in the Saturday game. Too.
I'm willing to bet that was John Tortorella.
I don't know, though, because I saw something about clarification of it because Joel Farabee was the one who served the penalty, and he's been out on PK before.
Right.
So the thought process was that maybe somehow or other Farabee's the one who said something. I don't know.
Maybe. Or maybe he had just been on the ice and Torts picked him because he wasn't going to be killing the penalty.
Maybe. I don't know, but look, it's not labeled like that in the notes. It just says it was a bench served by Joel Farabee, which to me makes me seem like this is a Tortorella thing.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So
probably Tortorella said the magic words. I don't know.
Heading into the break, because the Flyers do have this upcoming week off. We do have the All-Star festivities next weekend.
Yep.
Where do you think... Okay. We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that they're, 6 points out of a playoff spot, and they're technically still kind of floating around, but they are in the middle. They are kind of towards the bottom of the middle. Because if you break it down roughly, there's 5 good teams, 5 medium teams, and 5 bad teams in the conference, and they're teetering between the last medium team and the first bad team. It's not a great spot to be.
Sure.
Okay. Let me throw out a situation to you.
Yep, I want your questions. Here we go.
Is this the last chance to fire Chuck Fletcher before the trade deadline? And I don't think they're going to at this point. I think you're probably already too deep. But it's not
going to happen.
Okay.
And let's put it this way. Not that things can't change, but they already have a game plan over the course of this first week as January flips to February and early February. He's supposed to do something that involves Flyers fans of some kind, a forum or something. I saw that the other day.
One of their famous open houses.
Yeah, kind of. I think Snow the goalie had something on that. So
okay.
So basically, he's not going anywhere. And to be honest with you, I don't know of a general manager who's been fired this late into a season.
Okay.
I don't know of it to happen because there's too much that needs to take place if you were to do that, and I don't mean like a hiring process and all that type of stuff. You're so far past the point at this point because you just played your last game until early February, beyond All-Star Weekend. Well, All-Star Weekend falls on the 3rd and the 4th of February, which means that as of All-Star Weekend, you have 1 month until the trade deadline. Are you really going to try to pass your notes off to somebody else and say, this guy's doing the work now with a month to go? You shouldn't be,
No.
Like, it's too late for that. So he's in.
Would you be surprised if this dumpster organization did that?
No, because and I'll tell you why. And I was talking about this. I was talking about this the other night with somebody, and I kind of use this exact language to describe it because most teams, or what most teams should do when it comes to things like the concept seems to almost be that they're waiting for another, and it's not going to happen anytime soon now because they just won a game on Saturday. But they had lost 3 in a row coming in, and it's like they're waiting for like another massive losing streak to prove that his seat should get hot again or something. because
Right.
they started to win games, right?
Right, you can't fire him when you've won 7 out of 8 or whatever.
Exactly, something like that.
Right.
And kind of my point to the whole thing is, okay, listen, especially when it comes to management and team building and all that type of stuff, you can't be reactive to we keep losing, so we have to fire a guy. You've got to be proactive to where is this going and how are we not competing with everybody else? You know what I mean? Like, if you're looking at a team that doesn't have enough skill and doesn't seem like they're getting any skill and doesn't seem like they're making the right decisions on how to get that skill, then you need to be proactive in going in a direction that allows you to get that skill, right? You can't just sit back and be like, well, you know, we can't really fire the guy because we like him and they're doing well enough. Like, well enough should never be the answer. And I'm tired of kind of it being leaned upon that doing well enough is okay. You're not doing, like, the only team that right now can sit there and say we're doing well enough or close to is anybody who's within shouting distance of the Boston Bruins at this point. If you're the Bruins, you can say we're doing well enough, we can't do anything. And maybe if you're,
and they're still going to add. It's crazy,
right? But maybe if maybe if you're a team like Carolina or Toronto, where you're not at the top, but you're not number one, but you're close enough, you know. And even, you know, I'm trying to pick on a team. Let's pick on a team like Tampa, for example, because
on a team like Tampa.
No, you know what I mean.
3 straight cup finals.
I gotcha. Because they're in third place in a division. They're not exactly they've got a couple games in hand on Toronto, so they could jump to second, but they haven't exactly played like anything more than a number 3. Let's be real.
Right.
And yet their playoff spot is relatively secure. They're 9 points up on the next team that would be able to get the spot from them.
And no one on planet Earth doubts that they're getting in.
Well, right, but my point is like, okay, well, let's say that gap was just a little closer, and maybe the threat of being out of the playoffs is a little bit greater. Does a team like that, though, not sit there and say, you know what, we're doing good enough at this point that we can't make a move? Like, we have no reason to be proactive. We've got better than this.
They're gonna pick up. They're gonna pick up Luke Shen.
Oh, I believe that, actually. I fully believe that.
And he's just gonna fit right back in there.
But even actually, you know what? I've got a great example for you on one of them as well, or 2 great examples that I think would also apply for this. Take 2 teams like Vegas and LA. LA's got a -9 goal differential right now, despite being 3rd place in their division.
And having Anze Kopitar and Philip Deneau.
So it's kind of almost like, it almost is a little bit of faulty information there, because it's like, for a team with a -9 goal differential, they're in the playoffs, and they probably, you know, they got a 5-point margin here. So they're okay.
Right. They're probably making the playoffs at this point in time.
And a team like Vegas, and I'm like, Vegas's standings position is fine, but they're in a rough patch right now.
Yeah.
They've lost 4 in a row. They've lost 7 of 8, I think is what it is, or something like that. So it's like they're having some trouble right now. And like, I saw something the other day, like Bruce Cassidy's out there saying something like, we just can't do anything right now and stuff like, or something along those lines, right? Like they're really feeling it, and yet like they're still in 2nd place in their division, but you don't get reactive to even things like that when it's been good for the majority. You know what you've got. You have to kind of take the good with the bad. But when you're a team like the Flyers that doesn't have any like real prospects for anything other than a handful of guys that are going to be here next year, maybe, like otherwise your team is what it is, and you're not going to get any better. And I'm sorry, like, you're not above 500. You haven't been above 500 since you've had the chance to go above 500, I believe.
All right,
like everything, and there's just, you can't accept good enough, and you can't be like in terms of can't accept good enough, or, you know, if these guys were healthy or whatever the case may be, you also can't sit there and just wait for something bad to happen that prompts the response. Sometimes you just got to do it.
All right, Chuck, you ready? Trade JVR to whoever is a playoff team, eat half the salary, get a 2nd round pick, whatever it is.
Sure.
Bo Horvat.
Okay, so I want to bring something else up for a second.
Okay.
In relation to that, because I did see this as a rumor the other day. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't I'm not saying I don't know where. Like, I just don't know who it says. Like, I feel like it's just being thrown out there. Just throw it out there. Like, and you know that happens.
Well, it's the
right?
internet. If you say it, it means
no.
it's true.
No. I'm not talking about I don't know where the report is coming from. I'm saying, like, I feel like maybe the idea that this is a rumor is somebody out there, because you know how agents like throw stuff around, like, oh, I'm trying to get more interest in my guy, so this team's
drumming
interested.
up a little bit of smoke to see if somebody's willing to
Right.
light a fire.
I saw the fourth period brought up something like that they have interest in. I think it was interest in Brock Besser and Timo Meyer. Now,
Well, first of all, right. Timo Meyer has to come with a contract extension because he is an RFA, and you're going to have to give up a lot to get him. And I really don't want this team to give up a lot to get him just to have to qualify him, because I don't know if you're aware his qualifying offer situation. It's the Matthew Tkachuk situation where he has like a 1 year.
This is Meyer, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
He has a 1 year, $10 million qualifying offer that walks him right to UFA.
Interesting.
So I'd really rather not go down that road if we're the
No,
Flyers.
I got you, and I'm not like. The answer is neither. I mean, like, you really shouldn't be going after
Correct.
either guy at this point. Like, that's beside. It's so beside the point. Like, that just prolongs this aggressive retool thing. You know,
Cutter Gauthier and the Flyers' 2023 first round pick for Brock Besser and Bo Horvat.
I can't even go there. And Bo Horvat's had a great year.
Chuck Fletcher's managing for his job. Listen,
he already knows that. But
Travis Konechny gets to play on his cousin's wing. Come on.
Now look. There is a caveat to all of this right now. Not that it should matter, because I believe at the moment the idea is that this is Chuck Fletcher's final contracted year.
Okay.
And then there's nothing else beyond this at this point.
Do you know when his contract rollover date is? Like, does that expire July 1st like a free agent's, or?
I don't know exactly.
Okay, because that's nerve-wracking.
And here's the thing. Like I said, I believe that this is the supposed thing. I don't know it for fact, because usually things like that, like, about as much as we ever end up knowing is coaching contracts, and that usually leaks out, but we don't really know a whole ton about general managers too much. Because usually general managers are kind of...
It doesn't matter.
The whole thing with them is under the radar. You don't really get a ton of general manager firings during the year to have to equate the money. It's usually at the end of a whole thing. Like, you know, so it doesn't really make a difference per se, you know, but either way, like, I just don't get this concept of waiting for something horrible to happen so that you can justify, like, to justify what? You know, to justify the fact that it'll be the fourth 10-game streak that he's had under his watch, you know, on his watch. Like, what do you, like, if that's what you need, then get the hell out of the hockey business. Like, you can't, like, there's anybody running any professional sports team needs to know kind of where the game is going before it happens. And I get that other sports are easier to do this than others, because I've seen an awful lot on Twitter, an awful lot of the salary cap era thing needs to go, or they need to redo something with it, because now you're like, people are like, because it has to do with the amount of players that are on LTIR, the amount of teams that are utilizing it and things like that. And I totally get it. There's an element of that where, if we're still dealing with this next year, then I think everybody's got a point. This year, you already knew walking in that they were still trying, like, we're still
paying off our COVID escrow. Like, I think
exactly.
I think this year or next year is the last year the players are paying it off, and that's when we kind of expect to start seeing some salary cap jumps.
Right. Now I
theoretically the ease is coming.
Now here's the one area where I not counter, but it's like, I wish that this was a thing, and I wish it was a thing in every sport, to be honest. I mean, maybe baseball doesn't have to worry about this because they just have the luxury tax. They don't have the...
Baseball's embarrassing in terms of payrolls.
I hear you, but they
Isn't
don't
Aaron Judge making more than like the entire Arizona Diamondbacks or something ridiculous like that?
Not per year, I don't think. Is he?
I don't know. I saw a thing on the internet, and obviously
most contracts, like I hear you, most free agents are getting contracts that are $300-something million for years or something, so they make $30 million a year. So no, I don't think they're exceeding total team payrolls, but I do think that I hear what you're saying. They're like at least 50% of a payroll potentially. But baseball has the luxury tax, and baseball has like really no limits on where you can go with it. Like, if you want to exceed this luxury tax, that's on you as an owner, and you pay a penalty for it. But most people don't care, right? Like, there's no limits. I kind of wish that some of the sports that are like this, because the NFL has a salary cap, but the NFL also allows for restructuring contracts with regularity. And I kind of wish that that was the case. Like, don't you wish that instead of us having these conversations about, well, JVR, you got to trade him, eat salary. That's the only way you're going to move the contract over. Like, if you didn't like the contract that you made, or you made the contract to get the guy, and then later on did something to it to be like, so now the cap hit's going to be, go from $5 million to $3 million, but you're still going to get your money. We're just going to repurpose the way you get your money. Then it would change the game on the way, like Kevin Hayes. Kevin Hayes is making over $7 million.
By the way,
what if you got
real quick? You mentioned how much is Aaron Judge making?
Oh, I don't know exactly what he's making.
You said about $40 million a year,
something like that.
Is the number? Okay, great. He made more last year than Pittsburgh's payroll, Oakland's payroll, and Baltimore's payroll.
Well, there you go.
Oakland's payroll last year was $15.03 million.
Because they signed a bunch of guys for $1 million basically or less.
Baltimore $22.04 million. Pittsburgh $30.47 million.
Okay, because
insane.
Do you know why that is? Because not unlike a lot of other jobs out there in the world, if you can get it for cheaper, then you do it. So you take the inexperienced younger guy who doesn't have the big contract yet, and you run him out there instead of signing the $25 million player.
No, I totally get it. Baseball's a bit embarrassing with the payroll system.
Sure. No, I get you. But my point in saying it is that you don't worry about that stuff. And baseball went through the same thing. Like, baseball lost half a season. Baseball didn't have fans in the stands for the 60 games they had. So they're losing revenue too, but it didn't stop owners from being like, I got the money, I'm spending it, Yeah.
I wouldn't hate a luxury tax.
No, what I would like I said, I think the proposal should be that you have the ability to go to agents and restructure contracts to keep your players.
I've also heard a proposal that I really like, where a team can go over the salary cap within a certain distance of and after the trade deadline. So say within a week of until the end of the season, you get an extra 20% on your cap.
Okay, interesting.
That way you incentivize playoff teams for bringing players in. You don't have quite as much of the kind of punishment in terms of having to pay more for cap space.
I get
et
it.
cetera, et cetera.
It's a challenge. It's just a challenge because there's so much, there's a lot of logistics that go into any decision you would make.
Sure.
What I just don't understand is that because you got especially in the NHL, you've got teams that throw out money now with regularity. Hey, this guy who we know is no better than a second liner or a second pair defenseman is going to make $6-7 million next year because that's what we call the going rate for it. But the reality is that that's not going to age well, or maybe it will if the cap goes up, but the cap hasn't gone up. So when you're in this flat cap, there should be a way to readjust some things to make the cap work better, so you're not penny pinching here for other guys. This is how teams end up with the fourth liners that they do, because it's like, oh, I can get that guy for $750,000 because I have to, as opposed to I want to go out and get this guy. It just doesn't make any sense. If you could take, and that's why I said Kevin Hayes. We're sitting here having a conversation about Kevin Hayes going, with 3 years left on the contract, if they can find somehow or other a way to sweeten the deal to make a team want to take the rest of it and things like that. How about you just have the ability to say, listen, I like Kevin Hayes as a player and a person. I know he's not more, middle sit best, probably third liner really where he belongs. And I don't want to pay him $7 million toward the cap anymore. I'll give him the money, but I don't want to pay him $7 million toward the cap anymore. So I want to restructure this deal and get it down to $4.5-5 million instead toward the cap. And
That's
teams
fair.
do that, and NFL teams do that all the time, so that they can somehow or other still afford to pay $40 million a year to the quarterback that they want to have, while keeping a bunch of offensive linemen and linebackers and cornerbacks, and you name every other position out there. They find a way to keep everybody else around that they want to keep, because they say, we're going to readjust this whole contract so that this is how much cap money is going into it, and the rest will be this, and they stay under the cap.
Man,
I
we are
love
not
that
a cap podcast.
No, but I love that that's the way that you can do it, where it's like, instead of the idea that you have to move on from this player or have to eat salary just to make it work. And that's not to say that you need to you want to be doing that every single time.
I don't want to give this management team more tools to hang on to crappy players.
Well,
I don't want to give our current management staff that opportunity.
No, but okay. I'm not trying to play devil's advocate here or anything like that, but let's just kind of like have fun with something for a second,
Okay.
because it was everything that everybody talked about in the offseason. Johnny Gaudreau. Let's just say, like, at the end of the day, the idea was kind of couldn't make it work, right? They didn't even have the ability to offer anywhere close to what he wanted, right? So what if you could restructure somebody's contract to try to go after that guy? Like that's usually the leverage tool that happens in these other sports, right?
All you had to do to go after him was not sign Tony DeAngelo.
Well, that's not what they did, though. No, because you're sitting here saying all they had to do was not sign Tony. Then you didn't have to trade for his rights. Is the point?
Correct, is what I'm saying. Right.
Like, I thought your answer was gonna be all you had to do was throw a first rounder in with JVR, and you got the money too.
I mean, they shouldn't have done that.
Right now, I know why you don't want to trade.
What
the first
they
rounder,
should have done is not trade 3 assets for Tony DeAngelo and then sign him to a terrible contract.
Right, but okay. Let's play a game with this again. What's the reason why they went out and got Tony DeAngelo then? Ryan Ellis.
Ryan Ellis sucks. I know.
No,
it's all I know.
No. So what if you could take, knowing that Ryan Ellis is like a health, problem, restructure his deal so it's not a $6.25 million cap.
It's on LTIR anyway.
But you got to wait to put it on LTIR, so you can't sign somebody. So instead, you try to cut it in half.
You're allowed to go over the cap X% in the offseason.
No, I know you are, but then you still have to factor it in later, is my point. So what
Sure.
if you didn't have to factor in $6 million? You could factor in 3. You know what I mean? Like, that's my point. Like,
no, I got you.
Like, that's where the money really comes from. But my point is that teams in like the NFL look at their other guys and say, what do we need? Right.
So the thing is, the real problem with that system, there are a lot of NHL teams that don't have the financial capability to do that. They don't have the financial capability to pay out $50 million in bonuses so the cap hit gets cut in half. And that's why they won't do it.
Right, then you lose that so-called competitive balance, which really, let's be real.
Then Toronto and Boston and Montreal all just have all this extra cap space.
And depending on who owns what down the road.
And LA, Arizona, and Carolina don't have that extra cap space. You know what I mean? And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, and that's why they won't do it.
Carolina, maybe not so much, because Carolina.
You know what I'm saying? The smaller market teams.
No, I hear you, but with their Carolina with their new ownership might.
That's fair. That's fair.
That was the only reason I was countering that one. And and LA doesn't qualify the small market thing at all.
No,
so.
But they're a small hockey market.
Kind of, I hear you.
I know LA is not a small market for anything, just like New York's not a small market for anything.
I mean, I'm sure you could make the argument for Anaheim. Like Anaheim's not.
Now that Anaheim's not a Disney thing. There has never been any question about putting a second hockey team in LA.
No, they're kind of theoretically there is, but I know.
All right.
But maybe to your point, Anaheim's not owned by Disney anymore, so as such, like you kind of lose the big corporation bucks there, I guess.
That is fair. But. All right, I think that will do it for today. That was a good.
It was way more math than I was prepared to do. On a Sunday morning.
We are not a cap podcast, and we will not do that every week.
This is good though, because we didn't talk about anything else around the league other than cap stuff.
No, but that's good because we'll have next week to do that. We don't have any Flyers games to talk about. Our next show will be taking place the morning after the All-Star break. It's a really good time to do a little look around the league. We'll touch on maybe some early draft stuff. If the Philadelphia Eagles win today, we will be doing a little bit of a Super Bowl preview because we have to. And I can't think of anything else for next week, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be perfect because it's the day before everybody comes back, so it's gonna be great.
Absolutely. So until then, you can find that show where you'll find this show on our Twitter at YWT Podcast. You can follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find the show everywhere you find your podcast: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SportsTalkPhilly.com. We're all over the place. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell your friends. Share it around. All the YouTube algorithm garbage. Kevin, anything else?
Nope.
All right, me neither. Go Birds, and we'll see you.